so I'm James Beverly, Dr. James Beverly. I'm the minority leader of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. And the day-to-day grind is real. We're doing everything from stopping bad bills to promoting good bills. The number one thing we have to do is, vote on the appropriations because, as we know, from the federal standpoint and the state standpoint, every year Georgia gets about $50 billion goes through Georgia. And we are in the minority party trying to figure out how do we allocate and appropriate that money so that we can make lives better across the state of Georgia. So part of that is what we do, and then the other part is all of the craziness that goes on from, the Roe v. Wade going on to the voting, suppression that the governor's done, and beyond. We try to stop that stuff. Ahmaud Arbery passing those bills. And so I lead the charge to speak up for the minority in Georgia as the leader of the caucus.
My name is Billy Mitchell, and I chair the Minority Caucus in the House of Representatives. And let me just stop right there and say that the Minority Caucus has nothing to do with ethnicity. We just happen to be in the minority in the House of Representatives, so I like to refer to us as the Democratic Caucus. The Democratic Caucus chair is responsible for all the political goings on with our caucus. Every policy initiative that we undertake, that we fight for, has a political ramifications, and to work in collaboration with the leader to get some things done. I want to say to you as well that our leader is a humble one. The fact of the matter is that the leader in the Democratic Caucus is much like the Speaker is for the Majority Caucus. And I want to also say, for those of you who really follow these goings on, he is our present-day Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams held this role. So there's a lot of moving parts that go into passing good legislation as well as fighting bad legislation, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's a great question. The reality is that 6-week abortion ban is an assault on not just women, but families and men and everyone else. It's an assault on folk. It says that the government knows more about your body than you know about your body, about your health than you know. And what's telling about it is that once Roe v. Wade sort of came to states, is that the state gets to decide how it plays itself out. So the most important elections you're going to have is elections in the state house, the state senate, the governor's race. Now in Herschel, obviously, we don't want that guy nowhere near anything, right? But the reality is that the state has the right to decide a woman's destiny. And the only way you're going to change that is you got to change parties. And we're saying to everyone, Republicans absolutely voted for that. They will continue to push that unless we flip the state house, flip the Senate, or come close to the Senate and get a new governor, then that will take effect. Once that takes effect, then all bets are off. Here's what I do know. If Stacey Abrams is elected governor, that will never fly. So please, if you haven't voted yet, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, please vote. Mr. Chairman.
I would suggest to you that I will never have an abortion. I guarantee you I will never. But therein lies the dilemma that we're facing. This law, largely engineered, manufactured by white men, have made this such a political issue. Decades ago, this was never an issue. Now they have discovered that it certainly has become a galvanizing issue around their politics. It is the only reason why this is front and center. The fact of the matter is this should be a policy decision between a woman, their physician, their God. It certainly should not be an issue for politicians. I heard that the debate, the U.S. Senate, one of the candidates says there's also a baby in that room. Well, that's the debated policy there. When the actual, I'm a spiritual person, and the Bible I read says that the soul did not become a living soul until God breathed the breath of life into them. But in any event, whether you believe the literal sense as I do, the fact of the matter is that is not an issue that I should join in. That's an issue that is kept between a woman. I don't want a government that is powerful enough that they could make a 10-year-old girl who is raped and has life-threatening issues to bring that baby to term. I don't want a government that strong. But in any event, I believe that we need to make certain that we put in policymakers, and that's what this is. This is a policy decision, and that we put in policy decisions that will certainly take that into consideration. And I will furthermore say that this really will only affect working class and poor women, which is mostly from our community, because those who are well-to-do could even leave the country to do this where it's legal, where it can go to other states where it's legal, and that's not an opportunity that many in our community can enjoy.
Yeah, the one thing we had, so being a part of the minority caucus, meaning that, so in the state house there's 180 members, 91 get stuff done. So you have to have at least 91 people to vote your way to move things forward. We have 77 members, so that's what makes us a minority. You have 103, we have 77. So that means from a number standpoint, we're in a minority. We, as a minority, then, you don't have the ability, you have the ability to submit bills and try to get them passed, but the majority gets a chance to say, well, you got to get to 91. You're never going to get to 91 votes. So we don't care what good legislation y'all got. We're not going to listen to it. And that's the nature of the democracy, right? So within that space, though, within the framework of that space, we come up with bill after bill after bill that talks about voter suppression, that gives people access. There was a bill by Roger Bruce a few years back that says you should be able to vote anywhere in the state of Georgia, right? Not just access. You should have access. If I'm literally in Macon, but I live in Atlanta, but I work in Macon, I should be able to vote in Macon. That vote should be able to be counted in that election. Extending the time where people actually have a chance to vote, we should do that. I think that what's going to happen in the future, quite frankly, as Democrats become more empowered in the state of Georgia, because the demographics are changing, that we'll have a blockchain opportunity, meaning that people will be able to vote on their phones. And I think that day is coming. I don't think it's too far away, but we have to make substantive changes at the state level with state legislators so that Democrats can start to move this state forward and not do what we've been doing in the past.
No question, I could not agree with that anymore. The reality is back in, I want to say 2004 or 3, a brilliant young legislator sponsored the bill that created the first advanced voting period in Georgia. And that legislator, his name was Billy Mitchell, yes, Billy Mitchell. And at that time, we were apprehensive about it, to be quite candid with you. We had a Democratic Secretary of State, Kathy Cox. I sponsored the bill, and it was only for 1 week. And we were apprehensive about it. It was a trend that was going on, because at that time, more conservative cohorts were voting at a much higher rate during the absentee process than we were. And sure enough, after the first absentee period, advanced voting period, Republicans outvoted Democrats in that period almost 2-1. The following session, the Republicans took over the Georgia General Assembly, and they thought they had a gold mine. They expanded early voting to something like 6 weeks, Saturday, Sunday. It was everywhere. Lo and behold, what has happened in the interim is Democrats have started to catch up and now have surpassed them. And that's why you slowly see and steadily see them trying to curtail early voting, Sundays sold to the polls, even some Saturday voting. Same thing happened during the pandemic. We had drop boxes, which were very secure. There was not one incidence of anyone committing fraud with a drop box, but Democrats took so advantage of that opportunity. Today, you don't see very many drop boxes because they eliminated that. So we have to go out, vote in numbers too large to suppress. That is the calling card. Your viewers may realize that in our communities, there's always less voting machines than seem necessary, and in other communities, there's more voting machines than are necessary. But nonetheless, our ancestors, they had to go through and survive much more than this. We just have to make sure we go out and vote and put in different policy makers. You don't like the policy, you have to get different policy makers.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm a firm believer in this one truth, and I want everybody to hear this. Until America deals truthfully with the black man issue, America could never be great. We are left out of many of the equations. They don't invest in our communities. We don't have capital coming in. We don't have access. So when you think about being a black man, you're at the base of the pyramid. The only way you have access to me or the chairman, we're people from the community, so you have access to us all the time. But most politicians you don't have access to because you're at the base of the pyramid. And only if you're powerful, you know somebody, can you have a conversation. That has to flip, right? When you talk about recidivism and reentry, we need to talk about that and lean into that. When we talk about education in the communities that we are in, we have to lean into that. And we have to solve the black man's problem, because that's been intentional. So whether it was intentional to write us out of the equation or benign neglect, we've been left out. I'm saying to every black man who's listening to your show, and y'all brothers tell other brothers, time out for tokenism. We don't need any more tokens being elected. Nope. We don't need even more token shows of what money is being allocated. No, we don't need that. We don't need half measures anymore. No, we need to lean into the struggle that the black man has. And if we do that, if the state of Georgia does that, then we'll set a precedent for the rest of the world. So yes, Stacey Abrams is the one to do that, bar none. Now, Brian Kemp, well, he'll throw a token out there when he needs one, right? He'll give you a token judgeship, he'll give you a token this, but there's $50 billion that goes through the state of Georgia, $50 billion. We can't begin to and continue to have tokenism rule the day. So yes, you have to lean to the black man's problem. If we solve that problem, brother, we solve the problems of America.
Well, let me tell your black women voters that are viewing this program that if there is a discrepancy, a deficiency in black men voting, which I think much of it is manufactured, but if there is, I blame this on black women. Now, for the black women viewers who are watching this, before you shut off the program and say he needs to be run out of town, let me give you my thesis. If black women would say to black men, look, you can't talk to me. We can't go out unless you register to vote. You want to go out on a date? Let's go to get registered and let's go vote. You want my telephone number? I'll write it on that little peach I voted sticker for you. If they did that, black men would vote in record numbers. Now, very seriously, but relatedly, we as a people are an amazing species in that we have to kind of fall in love with our candidates to really get emotionally engaged and to support them. Whereas our more conservative cohorts, they don't do that. They fall in line. Let me give you but one example. If Barack Obama, great candidate and in my mind one of the best presidents ever, he had only served in the state Senate for a minute, and the U.S. Senate even less than that. But we loved his candidacy. But their side, you can be a candidate that your credential is you played football, but you held guns to your ex-wife's head and you beat up employees. Your verbs, your subjects don't agree. But they understand that it's an end to a means, and that's why they support him. Until we get to the point, not only black men, but all of us get to the point where we understand that public policy is created by those who serve in public position, and the only people, and we vote for those who are in public position. So this is up, the outcome of the maladies that we face is truly in our hands when we go to the ballot.
Yeah, so I think so there's a gap in hope where, they changed the GPA and so forth. And so and why that plays an important role is if you have an outside coach who can coach you on the SAT, you can blow it out. If you have an outside coach who can teach you how to take a test or to help you with your grades, you can blow it out. And that usually is mostly wealthy folk, right? My kids went through public school, my brother, ain't have no outside coach. You better do your homework, and that's that, right? So, but the reality is that other people play by a different ball game. So once you raise the GPA and the standards for SAT, then you knocked a bunch of people out. There are some people right now who just need another $1,000 to get through the semester, another $500 to get through the semester. So as the next iteration of hope comes, right, and I think we should lower the GPA so that if you go to college, right, you should be able to get hope. Certain GPA, but it shouldn't be a 3.7 or whatever it is now, right? Maybe it's back to a 3.0. But it's the folk who are on the margins who just need a little bit extra cash. That money should go to them. So it's just a means-tested way of giving folk who may make less than $75,000 a year, your family makes less than that, then we'll make sure you get through. Some gap financing for the kids who get through, and hope needs to have a new iteration so those people who don't have the GPA, may not have the money, right, can stay in college and finish up the education that they choose to go down. And I think that should be the next iteration of hope, at least one part of it.
And absolutely. The fact of the matter is when the Hope Scholarship first started, most of the recipients looked like me because they had an income ceiling on that. My more conservative cohorts took over, removed the income ceiling. Now, most of the Hope recipients do not look like me. The local media did a story maybe about a decade ago. The average Hope recipient at the University of Georgia, the state's flagship university, were driving BMWs and living in off-campus condos. So we definitely need to find a way to get those to school who are capable, who just can't afford to do so.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. The reality is that the amount of money that will come into the state through sports betting and economic development, through sports betting and casinos, should go to economic development, not just education, right? How do you incentivize everyone in the state of Georgia if these industries were to come through? Part of the focus with Ron Stevens, who you mentioned, and the Republican Party is that, it's just education. The pot is so big. The money is so big that you gotta have economic development opportunities that comes off of that money. Where does warehousing go? What does transportation look from Atlanta to Macon to Savannah? Like, the money is enormous. And so if we pass it, it won't be because there's a failure of imagination of how to spend it. We have to deploy that money, as I said when we first started, at the base of the pyramid. How do the people in these communities that may not have sports betting, may not have casino gambling, how do y'all benefit? How do you do the infrastructure jobs? How do you work in some of these places? All those kind of things have to be taken into consideration, and I think we got one shot at doing it. I don't think you do a sports betting in a casino. I think you do it all together, one shot, and we put it all in and we voted for it. Let the people of Georgia then vote, right? So once we put together a package, let the people of Georgia vote. Do we want this as a community? But you gotta make sure that economic development opportunities come off of the money that's coming in, and it should not just only go to education.
And to add to that, I look at every policy, or virtually every policy that we deliberate upon through a lens of what will it do for economic development? What will it do for jobs? As an elected official, I can tell you the number one request that I get from constituents is, can you help me get a job, or can you help my business get a contract? So that is the lens. Now, I don't know if your viewers are of the Tupac Shakur crowd, but even he himself said that it feels good to pay the rent when the rent is due. The gangster rapper himself understood the value of having economic opportunities. It's no question that having legalized gambling would create economic opportunities. But I want to make certain that it benefits our entire community, particularly the communities that are going to sustain it. The Georgia lottery now, I believe, is an unfair system, because if my community stops playing the lottery today, tomorrow they go out of business. But yet we're not feeling the full benefits of what the funds from the lottery that they generate. So we need to deal with that, and I think the leader is absolutely right. If we want to focus on not just having this legal, not just having people have a good time, but the economic development that could occur should this be passed in this state.
Last question.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, right. Look, in this space, you keep your eye on the work, right? What is the work? And if you get distracted by personalities, you never get the work done. What is the work? And you got to recognize, when I'm looking into the work, who are the stakeholders who are involved in that work? That means that people are going to have different opinions than you who are going to be involved in the work. So if the work for me is to make sure that, you know, our community eats, then I got to have other people at the table talking about why they shouldn't eat, so we can try to solve that problem, right? So a part of the nature of being in this space is you gotta focus, laser focus on what is the work that the people sent you to the Capitol to do. And when you reach a place where you're in a leadership, what is the work that your caucus wants you to do? Because what is the work that Georgia wants you to do? You gotta hear that. And oftentimes there are people who don't look like you or feel like you are involved in the same work because they want the same outcomes. They want progress for their communities and safety in the streets. We gotta be able to talk that way. And so, yeah, I'm in constant negotiation with people who I could not, if it wasn't for politics, I would never know their name, would never hang out with them. But because of politics and where we gotta take the state, you have to be able to work across the aisle with people to get the work done that the people sent you to the state to do.
Well, that's so well said. And the reality is the better legislators find a way to work with others, particularly when you are in the minority. There's no other way that you can accomplish anything unless you have the ability to work across the aisle.
This is easy, man. My phone number is 478 Beverly. My last name is Beverly, James Beverly. Now, a little caveat, the L is the number 0, okay? So that's my number, 478-238-3709. If you want to get me at the Capitol, it's easy. It's 656-5056. So 404-656-5056. But if y'all want to holler at me, 478 Beverly, the L is the number 0.
Wow. Let me just say my email address. I prefer you use an email address, because if you email me, you're going to be placed on a contact list where I will send you a newsletter which will describe how, if anything were to happen to me, the whole state would be in peril. So my email address is billy.mitchell@house.ga.gov. That's billy.mitchell @house.ga.gov. And certainly my phone number is 404-656-0298. But let me just tell your viewers this: if you need absolutely anything, and I mean anything you may need, please contact Leader Beverly. he will be glad to make sure that you're taken care of.
Very
good to be with you.
Yeah, you too. And I'll say this, just as Billy just said, my email address, james.beverly@house.ga.gov. And someone's always checking that. So james.beverly@house.ga.gov. And so use that as well. But Billy's right. Call me if you need me. I'm going to refer it back to him. No, I'll take care of it.
Absolutely.